what's up, Jason? How you doing, man? Thanks for doing this.
What's up, Mr. Tony? Doing great, man. Doing great. Thank you. Absolutely.
Dude, first I want to thank you, bro. Like you've been so great to communicate with, and like I've been sending everybody who wants to get into real estate your way. You've been like that liaison for me where people say, "Hey, I want to get into real estate," and it's been so easy for me to just give them your contact and
Sure.
just say, "Hey, here's the guy."
Well, and I appreciate that. I appreciate your sending them over. And yeah, it's something that we've been doing, the licensing school, for a number of years now. And there's a good number of realtors that have come out of it. So it's always fun.
Yeah. What would you say? Because so this week, two of your graduates sent me their licenses.
Cool.
So I actually sent you my brother, one of them.
Okay.
He sent me yesterday. He passed his real estate test.
Right on.
I felt so bad for him. He sends me the test and he goes, "Dude, so hard." And I go, "Dude, I did yoga for an hour before I studied for the test."
Yeah, that's cool, man. Well, I'm glad he passed, man. That's good news.
Tell me a little bit about how you got into the teaching program.
Yeah. Way back when I started as a young manager in my late 20s, Riverside County, the Norco area, which is where we were, Norco, North Corona. Right.
Okay.
I was being coached by the Mike Ferry organization, and my coach at the time was giving me different ideas to recruit, right, to grow the office. We were a small operation of about 25 agents, and the owner and I wanted to really make an impact there locally where we were. This was before that area really blew up with all those homes around it, like pre-Eastvale.
So
right?
when was that?
We're talking 2004, 5,
Ooh.
6, 7.
Yeah, that's early on.
All of that, right?
Yeah.
That whole area, I mean, Corona was just really coming up, and Corona was being advertised as, Orange County friendly, since it was just kind of around the corner there. And then, of course, Norco, and then further Eastvale, that whole Jurupa Valley, that was all farms back then.
Yeah.
So we kind of got in at a good time. The market and the growth, we were like right in front of it. And so the real estate school was, again, it wasn't my specific idea. It came from my Mike Ferry coach, but that was a way for us to recruit. That was a way for us to constantly have leads of individuals looking to get licensed, almost like junior agents, if you will. And we grew the office that way. And within about a 5-year period, we grew from a small 25-person office to about 200 agents and mortgage loan officers at the time. It grew to quite a big operation. So that's how that started.
Wow, that's awesome. So but you kept doing it.
Yeah, I did. I took a break for a couple of years when the market shifted, right? I think we all did, right? And from about 2000, I don't know, maybe 9 to about 11 or 12, I took a break from the real estate school. My partner at the time and I, we parted, and wasn't quite sure where things would end up. I ended up with the Keller Williams from that point, right, which is where you and I met. And I was with them for a good strong decade. And so then once I got in with that operation and we got going, then similarly, right, I went back to what I knew. I found that the real estate school was a good way to continue the recruiting, to continue having a base. And so we started it back up, I would say about 2012, and I've been doing it steadily since then.
Wow, that's awesome. How many agents would you say you've helped guide through the real estate school and into the testing?
Yeah, I've probably graduated about 4,000 agents in Southern California as an instructor, mostly in that Inland Empire area, right? Riverside, San Bernardino, some LA County. And of that 4,000, I'd say about half of them have become realtors and are somewhere active out there in the in our community.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How do you is there any realtor that you've gotten through your course that is one of the elites, one of the, they say the 95-5 rule doesn't apply to real estate because it's more like 99-1. So what do you have any that stand out that you can say, I got this person over the hump and they're an elite 1%er?
Yeah, no, there's a number of them out there that are we got a president, and I won't name them specifically, but we've got a president of a local NAREP chapter that came out of our school. We
Let's
got a
go.
local broker owner that's come out of our school. We've got one really big top producer in the Century 21 system there locally. That
Okay.
all of them have come out of the school, right? And I don't look to kind of brag on them over, right? I was an instrumental part at the very beginning of the career. They've all kind of gone through and done their thing. What I'm most proud of, though, is the fact that we remain in relationship, right? So many
Yeah.
of them are now colleagues. Some of them consider me their mentor. Certainly, I consider them all my friends.
Oh,
And
I
so
love
that's
that.
what I'm most proud of, that we stay in relationship through the years, despite their different levels of success, for sure.
I find it interesting. And one of the big things I'm playing with right now is really the transformation of how the business has shifted. I love your input on this, right? Because there is the big networking aspect that was our industry, right? And it was all about who you know and how many cards you can get in your Rolodex, how many people you can get in your contacts, versus the next part. And what I'm really seeing in the next phase is data manipulation. How much data can you collect online, and how are you going to leverage that data to be able to yield closed transactions?
Mhm.
And it almost creates like two different dichotomies in the system, because I've tried to blend and they start to conflict, where it's, am I going to be the well-known, for me, lender, the well-known lender amongst the community, or am I going to have my headphones on and I'm going to be
Mhm.
making 200 calls a day?
Mhm.
Like, how do you see that shift happening, or do you see it, and do you think one is better than the other?
Yeah, and I don't have a personal judgment around which one is better. I have seen Tony now for so many years in different markets, different methods of how agents do business find success.
Yeah.
Right. I'll tell you what, when I first started, and I was coached by Mike Ferry, right? And I still love Mike. I mean, he's still an icon in the industry. And yet I was really almost closed-minded to, his method of how you get business, right? Which is active prospecting, right? Lead generation, old school, on the phone, and you're following up. And I still believe in that. It's probably in my core as a business person. And yet, when I was exposed to other methods of business, and I saw that there was other agents across the country in different markets doing as much business or more as I had seen, and thought this is the only way, it really changed my perspective around what the right way to do business is. I think the right way is whatever fits for the agent. And as long as they remain consistent with it, hold themselves accountable, gosh, I've seen, I mean, almost anything work, right? I certainly have my preferences,
What
both
are your preferences?
as a business person and as a coach. But that's not to say that there, multiple methods won't work. And I, to answer your question around what I think what I prefer, right? It's mostly building relationships, right? I, just like with the school, just like with my coaching practice, just like myself as a leader in the industry, I love developing relationships. I think that's part of what's allowed me to stay this long in the industry, is that I've got people that I mean, we text each other, and we've known each other for 30 years,
Yeah.
right? Because we're still doing what we do, and some have gone to different areas or different markets or even different industries, but that relationship stays. I think that's a good policy in business in general. And agents that tend to do that, I align with them well, right? Because that's kind of my preferred method in general. Also, again, no judgment around other methods, because right, not everyone's gonna sell cheeseburgers that same way, so to speak,
Right.
right? But that would be probably, if I were to say what my preference is, that's probably where I would go with that.
Relationship business is, I think it's so strong, right? I was teaching a new loan officer, William, yesterday, and one of
Mhm.
my agents walked in, and he just waltzed right into my office, and right? And he just walks in, I give him a bro hug, and we talk a little bit about his deal, and he just came in to stop by and say hi, right? And this is a real estate agent coming to a lender office. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
But
It's
that's
normally the other way around,
yeah,
right?
normally it's the other way around. But these are my boys, and I looked at William, I said, I was teaching him some of the basics of DTI qualifications, very, very basic lender training. And I go, very, very impromptu lesson here. Do business with who you know, like, and trust. And that's going to get you, I think, very far in this career. If you can spend some time getting to know who it is that you want to do business with, finding those individuals, and then doing business with those people.
For sure.
Right.
Agreed.
You've talked a little bit about coaching, and I haven't. I'm just in the beginning of this podcast. It's probably our 10th episode drop, but I haven't had anybody talk about coaching.
Okay.
And so I would love to, one, highlight what you do as a coach, but also really talk about why it's important. Because I truly believe that my jump from like a $12 million a year producer to a I did 54 million in personal production, not counting my branch last year. Like the entire leap was because of two coaches that I picked up on.
So, coaching, I was fortunate, Tony, that I was introduced to coaching very early on. I was 28 years old. The owner of the office that hired me as their manager, I was a manager for a company called Golden Feather. And Golden Feather was a contractor of HUD. They were a private company that was contracted to sell HUD homes across different states. I was a manager.
Let's go.
And then, so I had some management experience, young manager at that, right, in my 20s. But this individual brought me over to manage the small operation that I mentioned a minute ago that had about 25 agents at the time. One of the things that he did is he included me to be coached from the very beginning. And so I almost thought it was an automatic, right? To be held accountable to somebody, to measure your numbers, to always work from profit, to calculate your risk very carefully, to know where your business is coming from, right? To know what percentage of total numbers is profitability versus everything else. I almost thought that was automatic, right? Because not only did we operate that at Golden Feather, the contractor, we had to show that to the federal government to maintain our contract. But then when I got into coaching, that was a standard for me. And so fast forward, when I got into coaching more formally was while I was with Keller Williams. First started off as a bold coach. They have a training program that they promoted, especially at that time, in regards to helping agents raise their production and then, of course, hold them accountable. And then from there, I transitioned into working with agents one-on-one. I coached for Tom Ferry for a number of years after that, and then I've been coaching just on my own for the last number of years, since most of my clients come to me by referral. The whole time, it's been about those things that I just mentioned. Profitability, where's your business coming from? And holding you accountable. Many agents know what they want to do, but they don't do it. Right? They know what they need to do and they still don't do it. And then time goes by and they wonder why their business isn't growing, or maybe at a greater level, why their life isn't changing. And so a coach that they trust, that gets into relationship with them, can really help with that, because they bring an unbiased perspective that is there to help promote the person or push the person. And many times that's the difference between doing it and not.
Yeah, having that call. How often are you connecting with your mentees?
Yeah, so my coaching program has us meeting once a week for a 30-minute phone call, kind of the traditional coaching program that is out there for real estate agents. Sometimes we do more. Sometimes we don't even need the 30 minutes, but we're basically measuring what it is we said that was going to take place last week.
Yeah.
That's where we start. All right, Tony. So I have my list, right, of what you said you were going to do. How did it go?
Did you do it?
Right. And so it always starts there, because there's always something that needs to be done. And then, of course, Tony will say, what happened during the week? right? And of course, that's where the coaching conversation really takes place, because it's what the activities we're wanting to do versus sometimes what gets in the way, and that is the coaching relationship. The business person gets stronger during that period, knowing that what they say they're going to do is being held accountable by someone that's in their corner, someone that's there to help them.
Now, are you the coach who's going to sugarcoat it, or are you going to give it to them? Let's just say you were to coach me, and I come back. Sure. You say, hey, you need to make 1,000 phone calls.
Right.
You need to have, from those 1,000 phone calls, I need 50 contacts, 10 appointments, right, et cetera, et cetera. I come back, I say, you know what, coach, I did 250 phone calls. You know, what is your response when your students don't abide by those metrics?
Yeah, look, one of the things that I learned early on is to not be emotionally attached to the outcome, right? And it's one of the reasons why I coach privately now versus with one of the big brands. You see, I don't have anyone in my coaching practice hovering over me, wanting to make sure I keep clients.
Yeah.
Right. And that, you got to remember that coaching is like a brokerage, is like anything. It's like a restaurant. It's a business.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you're a coach you're kind of as a coach accountable to an organization, you might be almost tilted towards keeping clients versus really saying what they need to hear. I have no bias in regards to our relationship is solely based on helping that agent move forward. It has happened many times that I will tell a client, hey, Tony, I mean, maybe we need to take a break, right? Because if you're not at a point where you're willing to commit to the activities that you're saying you need to do, well, then maybe what you and I are doing is not working, at least for the time period. And that's happened. Right. And that doesn't mean we don't stay colleagues. That doesn't mean, right, I'm not cool with you. It just means I'm authentic enough to our relationship where I'm willing to say that. Right. So that doesn't mean that there's not hiccups along the way. Everyone has those, myself included. Right. But if there's a pattern where the agent is saying they're going to do something, then they don't do it, and that happens, 4, 5, 6 times in a row, well, then it certainly needs to be addressed.
Okay. I love that.
And again, that's part of the relationship, right? That's part of the trust. And that's most of what goes on. And I got to tell you, most of the clients that I've been with right now have been with me for 6 or 7 years, because the relationship is that strong.
Well, man, Jason, just like we've been really interacting quite a bit more over these past few weeks, months. And like, man, you've been amazing. Your communication's great. I text you questions and you give me answers I'm not even a part of your program, just as I'm texting you as a friend, and you're giving me answers that are fantastic. And I've been really leaning on you. So I want to thank you. And I appreciate that. And,
Absolutely.
Before we run out, I met you at Keller Williams. You talked about what you did with them.
Right.
And then I see you switch to EXP.
Right.
You joined the dark side. The blue side.
Right.
You switched from the Bloods to the Crips, you traded in the red to the blue.
Change sides.
I see so many people going to EXP right now. It's crazy. With you just being really a pioneer and a leader in the industry, what made you go and say, I'm going to leave Keller Williams, the staple of American real estate, and go join this new tech firm?
Yeah. And look, it was not an overnight decision. I had a number of friends, right? Being a long-term Keller Williams guy, I was there for more than 10 years. I was a franchisee. I was a regional trainer. I was a bold coach, a MAPS coach, a MAPS Leadership Council. The whole thing. I bled their colors, so to speak, right? And so through the years, many of my friends and colleagues that had gone over from across the country would, make that phone call, and I just wasn't open to it. What I was observing, though, even though I had no intention of changing brands, was that I, as a broker owner, right, as a franchisee, no longer wanted to have the obligation of this big, giant palatial operation our operation had 2 of them, and my financial obligation to that. Just as a business person, that no longer made sense to me. I was already from about 3 years prior to joining, making arrangements to pull out because I wanted to have my money working for me, quite honestly, in real estate. As you know, I own real estate rentals in Memphis, Tennessee, and I wanted my money there. And I already kind of saw, like, God, like, agents want more commissions, things are getting more expensive. That broker
margin, yeah,
is you're very squeezed. And the reality of it is that my partner and I, we're the ones on the hook for everything, right? The lease included, the employees, and so you're really locked into that. So I had already removed myself from that, having foresight that I just didn't want my money there. And then, of course, this whole COVID thing hit 2 years ago. And our operations, right, because I was also at that point the broker of multiple operations, our operations had to, for the most part, close down. In LA County, we couldn't even enter our building. How did we run the operation? I mean, we still had escrows, we still had agents, we still had training. It's not like if people stopped buying homes, we just couldn't meet where we were used to meeting. And so then we started doing things like this, right? I was on the phone, on the text, on the Zoom, on the email, on the everything, staying in contact with my agents. I actually had to raise my communication with the agents in order to provide them a better service because I couldn't see them anymore. And it was that time that the friend of mine that brought me over to EXP reintroduced it. And I realized that the company had already been operating like that for almost 10 years at that time. And what I saw by force, they saw coming. And that's when it made sense to me, right? And then I was no longer tied financially. As I mentioned, I had already sold my ownership in my franchise. I was already, somewhat able to step away. And then an opportunity came in here with me at EXP, and I just jumped on it. And Tony, it's been a great move, not only because the people behind EXP are solid, they're real estate people with a vision of where brokerage is going, right? Where brokerage is going. Because you say, well, we're a tech company, and we are, yet at our heart, we're a broker. I mean, our founder, Glenn Sanford, is a real estate agent. Right? He's not some guy that came up with some idea wanting to pierce our industry. He's one of us. And so our culture, our leadership, our management, dude, we're solid. And when I saw that, it just made sense. And, now being here more than 2 years, I'm more convinced now than I was when I opened my eyes to it. And so that's what made me make the move. I still have love, of course, for my friends at the former company, and like I do with the industry in general and our colleagues. Like I said, there's not, I don't think, a right or a wrong way. Yet for me, this is more in line with where the industry is going and where the brokerage business is going. So I'm in the spot that works best for me at the time.
I agree wholeheartedly that the industry is shifting, the dynamic is shifting. Even on our end, we have to have a brick and mortar for our branch offices.
Right.
But I see it, and I'm like, right now we're debating opening up a giant hub here in Temecula for American Pacific Mortgage, and I have 2 offices underneath me, and I'm like, man, we really don't need to go out and get a 10,000 square foot office space with a $12,000 a month rent. Right. We don't need it. Like, my 8 a.m. calls are all via Zoom. Half of them are driving in traffic.
Sure.
It's a very interesting model. But before I leave you, again, I just want to thank you, man, so much for your guidance every step of the way through.
No, absolutely. And let me just make one more point on that, because I think what you're considering, right? And in the mortgage industry, I realize there's different regulation than there is on the a sales side. But that's the reality that many brokers and business owners are faced with, right? Is where they put their funds. I think we agree that margins are squeezed, right? They get smaller and smaller as, right, agents command more and more commissions.
Yep.
And so if you're able to find a way, like EXP or some of the companies that do similar to what we do have found, where you take those funds that would go to those hard costs, and instead you either pump them back into the company, or here's another idea, share them back with the agent so that they could do their own technology, right? Because ultimately, if I have a big lease, I'm passing it down to my agents and their commission structure. Right? It's got to get paid somehow. Yeah. If you're able to modify that, not have those expenses, and share those back with the agents, then it's a win-win. It's a win for the brokerage. It's a win for the agents. It ultimately, I think, trickles down and becomes a win for the client. And so it's all good, man. And I think not only in real estate and in mortgage, but just in business in general, now that we know that we could do business through technology, I don't think there's going back. I don't think there's going back. I love seeing friends, having hugs, seeing people hugging each other, bro, what's up, and the whole thing. And yet that's like special and extra. The reality of it is that we could do business even when we don't have that. It changes the lines. It makes us that we could do business further. Anyway, we're out of time, but that's what gets me excited about it, man. I think the sky's the limit for sure.
Bro, it's time. And hey, if you got time for one more question,
go ahead. Yeah, for sure.
What keeps you motivated? Why are you still doing this?
Yeah. No, great question. It's not for me, it's for what I leave. Right. In other words, I subscribe to this a modality that is the purpose of business is to fund the perfect life, right? It's a long-term business saying out there. It's one of the sayings that was in the program that I used to teach, and it basically, if you subscribe to it, you're suggesting that what we're doing for business, right, being profitable, of course, we're taking that and we're funding this ideal life, this life by design, if you will, and I have that at least visually, mentally, for what I want to do, which includes my kids. I've got 2 grandkids now, and I want to be able to give them and set them up with some things that will give them a head start. And that keeps me going, man. That keeps me motivated. It keeps me energized, and it keeps me excited, right? And so point blank, to answer that question, that's what it is. It's ultimately for what I'm able to do and provide for my kids, my loved ones, and that legacy, and that keeps me pushing.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I just told somebody a very similar answer. I said, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Cesar Chavez. I try to hit all the
the whole line.
The whole line.
Yeah.
But it's their names never died, and that's something worth chasing.
Sure.
Right. That's something worth chasing. You do it for your kids, your grandkids. I'm doing this for my daughter, and there's no better why than when you do it for those that you love. Jason, I appreciate you, bro. Thanks for the beginning of a beautiful partnership. Thanks for your knowledge, and my offer still stands. When you start your Canada tour, my Airbnb is all yours.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll have to take you up on it. So we'll chat, I'm sure, soon.
Keep me posted. Thanks, brother.
Okay, man.
Take
care. Got it, Tony. Talk later, brother.
Talk soon. Bye.